Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another edition of Budget Magic. So this week, we are heading to Modern for a deck I'm really excited about. This combines two things that I really love and I've been trying to do for a long time. On one hand, we're finally playing Panharmonicon in Modern. On the other hand, I've been trying to make Grey Merchant work in like a Mono-Black Devotion strategy for Budget Magic for a long time, but I always get stuck on the fact that Phyrexian Obliterator is so expensive and it's so important and good to the deck to power up Grey Merchant. And this week, I realized, as weird as this sounds, Panharmonicon can do a pretty good Phyrexian Obliterator impression. It's not going to beat down, it's not going to kill our opponent attacking, but if our goal is to win with Grey Merchant, it might even be better than Phyrexian Obliterator because it doubles up the Grey Merchant trigger. So we're playing a deck that's overloaded with Enter the Battlefield abilities, trying to disrupt our opponent, stall out until we get Panharmonicon, and then we slam Grey Merchant and ideally just win the game on the spot. So I'm calling is Mono-Black Panharmonicon, but like I said, it kind of walks the line between a weird Mono-Black Devotion deck and a straight-up Panharmonicon deck, kind of a mixture of both. As you can see, 82 bucks in the paper world, 39 ticks online, so super cheap for a really sweet Modern deck. A quick reminder before we break it all down, if you enjoy this Mono-Black Panharmonicon deck, and you enjoy Budget Magic in general, it would be amazing of you if you could take a quick second, click that subscribe button down in the corner of your screen. It's a great way to support the channel and the site for free. So let's talk Mono-Black Panharmonicon. So I'm sure you know what Panharmonicon does by now. We've played it multiple times in Standard. In this deck, it basically doubles our Enter the Battlefield triggers. We don't have any really crazy tricks or abusing in any strange ways, which is possible because of how it's worded, but in our deck, it's pretty straightforward. We're looking to get a Panharmonicon on the battlefield, and then almost every single creature in our deck, actually it might be every single creature in our deck, has an Enter the Battlefield ability, so instead of getting that ability once, we get it twice, and that makes cards that are good into cards that are insanely good. So, example one are our big finishers. We have Grey Merchant of Asphodel, which is just ridiculous. It it drains the opponent, so our opponent loses X life and we gain X life, where X is our devotion to black. Normally, this is going to be 5 damage, 7 damage, with the help of like Drolf's Messenger, which is next to it. But with a Panharmonicon on the battlefield, Grey Merchant essentially has a multiplier of X2, or if we have 2, X3. So it drains for 2 times X, where X is our devotion to black. So it's very possible with a fairly normal curve in our deck that we drain for 14 on turn 5 with Grey Merchant, and in the late game it can be even more than that. So Grey Merchant is normally how we close out the game. Just super powerful. We have tons of black mana symbols. For example, Drolf's Messenger. And Drolf's Messenger is already a really good card, and that's one of the things I realized about Modern Panharmonicon. In Standard, you can kind of get away with playing some subpar cards because the format isn't that punishing, at least compared to Modern. In Modern, you really want to try to play good cards and make them great with Panharmonicon instead of playing below average cards and making them good with Panharmonicon. And Drolf's Messenger is a great example of that. It's a good card. It's a 3/2 for 3. It comes back in as a 4/3 once it dies, and it drains for 2 each time it enters the battlefield, so it does 4 damage in a typical game. With a Panharmonicon, it turns into an 8 damage burn spell for 3 mana. We cast it, drain for 4 thanks to the double trigger. It dies, come back, drains for 4 more, and we get a reasonable creature in between. It also works great with Grey Merchant, giving us 3 black mana symbols, so just a Drolf's Messenger and a Grey Merchant drains for 10 with a Panharmonicon on the battlefield. Just those 2 things, and we likely have way more than that, because that's what our deck's trying to do. So we also play, as a secondary finisher, Grave Titan. So Grave Titan, another card that's just already really strong. It makes 10 power and toughness for 6 mana. It's big, it has Death Touch, spreads that out over a bunch of bodies. If we have a Panharmonicon, it makes 14 power and toughness. 14 for 6 mana, which is just absurd. We get 4 2/2 zombies and the Grave Titan when it enters the battlefield. Then when it attacks, we get more zombies, so just very strong. So if we don't quite have enough drain from Grey Merchant and Drolf's Messenger, Grave Titan is our way to just close out the game with this huge board presence. The rest of our deck is built around some tricky Enter the Battlefield abilities. So we have a ton of removal in this deck, but instead of playing Dismembers and Doom Blades and Victim of Nights. We're doing it with creatures so we can double it up with Panharmonicon. So we have a really sweet removal curve. So part of making Panharmonicon work is slowing down the game enough that it's relevant in a really fast format. So with the combination of Shriekmaw, Gatekeeper, and a single Necrotal even, we can, on turn 2, evoke a Shriekmaw, kill one of our opponent's things. On turn 3, kick a Gatekeeper, kill our opponent's next play. On turn 4, we can cast Necrotal, kill our opponent's next play, and then we're back around to Shriekmaw without evoke this time on turn 5. So we just 2-for-1 our opponent into oblivion with these creatures. So they help us survive the early game. They have some upside. Gatekeeper kills hexproof creatures since it's actually an edict effect, but after we get a Panharmonicon, these cards just become so insanely overpowered. Shriekmaw becomes a 1-in-a-black sorcery that kills 2 creatures. They can't be black or artifacts. That's not super relevant, but 2 creatures for 2 mana is very good. And then after our removal, we play a ton of discard creatures. And just like our removal spells, they work the same way. They're fine on turn 2, on turn 3. Disrupt our opponent gives us a chump blocker. And then after we have a Panharmonicon, they're amped up into really strong spells. So Brain Maggot and Disciple of Phoenix give us some sort of like targeted discard. They're almost like creature thought seizes. Brain Maggot has a downside of when it dies, our opponent gets the card back, so it's more of a delaying tactic than a real thought seize. Disciple is pretty expensive, but it's a real thought seize. Equal to our Devotion to Black, normally our opponent will reveal their entire hand. We get to pick a card, our opponent has to discard them. So that's very good. But mostly these are cards that we can play in the early game. They give us black mana symbols to power up Grey Merchant and so forth, and just kind of disrupt our opponent a little bit to buy us enough time to get the Panharmonicons and Grey Merchants and Grave Titans on the battlefield. Ravenous Rats and Chittering Rats are the same way. They don't target in the way that Brain Maggot and Disciple do. Instead, they just kind of make our opponent discard at random. Chittering Rats, it's not technically discard. Our opponent has to put a card from their hand on top of their deck, so they're kind of skipping their next draw, which is sort of like weird discard. And then when we have a Panharmonicon in the late game, and that's one of the things I really like about how Panharmonicon works, these cards, we want them in our deck to play in the early game. They chump block, they make our opponent discard or disrupt them slightly. In the late game, Ravenous Rats turns into Wrench Mind, essentially. Our opponent has to discard 2 cards for 2 mana. Chittering Rats can be almost a double Time Walk. If our opponent has 2 cards in hand, doesn't have a fetch land to shuffle, they gotta put those 2 cards back and draw them over the next 2 turns instead of drawing new cards. So all these cards get really absurd with a Panharmonicon, so they're good in the early game to keep us alive until we get to Panharmonicon, and then they're insane in the late game once we have Panharmonicon. So that is kind of the idea of the deck, to stall out with our discard, kill our opponent's stuff with Shriekmaws and Necrotals, and then stick our Panharmonicons, double up our drains from Grey Merchants and from Drolf's Messenger, and then if all that's not enough, we just slam 14 power and toughness for 6 mana with our Grave Titan and hopefully take over the game that way. The last main deck card is a couple of Phyrexian Arenas. This is really key for control matchups, draws us an extra card every single turn, and then it's even fine in aggressive matchups because we can gain so much life back with Grey Merchant. Also 2 black mana symbols to power up Grey Merchant. Mana base, 23 swamps, 2 ghost quarters. In the sideboard, we get some more sweet Panharmonicon creatures. Lifebane Zombie comes in against Tarmogoyf decks. Anything with green or white creatures, we get to exile a creature from our opponent's hand. When it enters, gives us a 3/1 body. If we have Panharmonicon, we get 2 creatures. So that's Wiltleaf Lieges and Thalias and Tarmogoyfs. A lot of targets. Minister of Pain and Demon of Dark Schemes are pretty much our like Pyroclasm effects or Anger the God effects. They get rid of a whole bunch of Lingering Souls token, which would be really annoying. Having a bunch of go wide tokens from Pyromancer or Lingering Souls makes our Gatekeeper really bad. It's hard to kill them all with Necrotals and Shriekmaws. So we can bring in these cards to just wipe away a whole board full of tokens. Ravenous Trap to hate on graveyards. Some Duresses for control and combo matchups for additional discard. And then Disfigure and Dismember for more removal. These are helpful in matchups where Shriekmaw is bad, which is Dark Confidant is a something that we can't kill very easily. Also Affinity, we're not very good at killing their stuff since it's all artifacts. So Disfigure and Dismember help there. Also good against Infect, giving us some instant speed ways to kill kill an ink moth or whatever. And that is Mono-Black Panharmonicon for Modern, and that's our budget magic for this week. So I think this deck is really sweet. It's really fun to play. It's pretty upgradable. You can add in a lot of really sweet black cards, and doubling or tripling up Gray Merchant is just as awesome as it sounds. We get tons of removal, which can keep us in a lot of games. Our discard, we have stuff that's good in almost every matchup. So our discard is great against control and against combo, and we have a ton of discard. Our removal is great against creature-based decks, keeping all of our opponents' early game plays in checks, and then almost no matter what our opponent's doing, the combo of Geralt's Messenger and Gray Merchant is going to be able to drain our opponent out of the game. And if somehow they gain so much life that doesn't work, Grave Titan can just take things over. We got card advantage from Phyrexian Arena, so we have a lot of really good things going on in this deck, and it's really fun to play. Once you slam a Gray Merchant with a Panharmonicon on the battlefield, I'm pretty sure you'll be hooked. Anyway, that's our budget magic for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the gameplay videos, and I will talk to you soon.